All right, y'all. Good morning, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Welcome to our second consecutive online asynchronous day because of UK canceling once again for another cold day. I've never been like I've been here for a while, both as a student, graduate student, and then now as teaching. I've never seen a stretch of 3 consecutive days of UK canceling. I've seen one, I've seen two in a row, but I've never seen three. So it's kind of rare for this to happen. But I was able to head around the city yesterday. I had some errands I needed to run, some much needed groceries I needed. It took me an hour to de-ice my car. I had that much on it. And the roads are so awful too. There was times where I was slipping and sliding. I'm like, what is Lexington doing and not even, getting rid of this stuff? And I think today, with all the sun that we're going to be getting, we could see a lot of melting, and that could be either good or bad because melting, that water kind of sits and that erodes all the salt and the stuff that they put on the roads, and because that washes it away, it then kind of freezes back on the roadways on the evening side. So I don't think we're ever going to be truly away from the chance of having black ice or slippery stuff for at least until it gets above freezing, which isn't in play until literally late next week, which is absurd. But welcome to Kentucky, welcome to winter. So hopefully it can alleviate here soon. But I'm hearing chances of possibly more snow on the weekend. It's very small, but still that chance nonetheless. Okay. So today we're going to do just a brief online lecture, just very brief. I want to go over content analysis. Remember, this is going to be the assignment that you do at the very end of this semester. But I want us to get kind of put it in the forefront of our mind because it is a very large assignment. Okay, it's a very large assignment, and you're going to have to um, begin taking note of your specific player or team or league and their social media posts by the beginning of February. So that will be in what, 4 days? Okay, so that'll be before I think maybe the day that we meet on Monday, um, or maybe just before that. So I'm giving y'all the heads up now that y'all need to begin recording your social media profiles for the entire month of February. So you can split that up in any way that you want. For example, you have to find ways to make it to operationalize it. So, for example, I can't, if I'm doing, for example, Kentucky basketball, I can't just say, oh, they posted this, this, and this, and this. You have to say in what element did they post it. So, for example, you can make specific operationalizations of it. For example, you can have, did they post about team practice or news or recruiting or endorsements or charity or performance, all these different things. And then from those areas, you can begin to tally how many that they have and how many posts that they have during that given time. Okay. So if UK posts, if I'm looking through the entire month of February, which is 28 days, and they're going to have however many games are within that time, and numerous times of practice and interviews and stuff like that. Okay, you can take, oh, they have 20 posts about team practice. They have five about endorsements, two about recruiting. Okay, that's what you do as you go on through it. But remember, we're looking at new and traditional media for this content analysis. New and traditional. New meaning check your socials, right? Check your online, right? So that'll be what I want you to do. I want two sources for new media. So you can choose Instagram, you can choose Twitter, you can choose TikTok, you can choose Facebook, anything that was regarding around the new and social media aspect of kind of the media side. Okay, but then I also want you to tackle traditional media as well. Remember what we talked about? What traditional media was: print, television, newspapers, radio. Okay. So choose one thing in which you know UK might be discussed during any given point in time. Okay. So if I want to check out ESPN.com, or if I want to check out The Athletic, or if I want to check out I would stay away if you choose to do UK again, you don't have to. I actually don't want you to do UK because of how close in proximity it is. I want you to branch out and do something different. But I'm just using UK as an example. I don't want you to take like the UK Athletics website. I don't want that because that's kind of biased and it's unfair. And of course, they're going to be posting about it, right? So it's going to make it a little unfair. It's going to skew your results just a tad bit. Okay. So try to find an exterior traditional media source. So Sports Center, you can go on SEC Nation or an SEC Network and find some kind of program there that talks about UK basketball. The Athletic, anything that you think that might have a lot of coverage or specific coverage about Kentucky basketball over the month of February. Okay, so I want you to operationalize your content analysis, your units, right? Operationalize your units, which means you choose specific thresholds that you can mark as what they are posting. Okay, endorsements, charity, so on and so forth. Okay. That's your goal through the entire month of February. And again, I will kind of go back in more in depth when we meet back in class on Monday. But that is the plan. Okay, that's what I want y'all to do for this assignment. And then after, you're going to begin to craft your study. Well, it's kind of this your content analysis is the study. I'm going to kind of go in depth about what that is today. Okay. So that's the plan. I'm going to go into a lot more detail when we meet back in class about it, but for now, that's kind of the preliminary. So make your choice about what you want to do your content analysis on. It can be any team, any player, any league, anything like that. It is your choice. You have complete freedom about what you want to do. So if you're a fan of the Tampa Bay Rays, then do the Tampa Bay Rays. If you're a fan of the Buffalo Bills, you can do the Buffalo Bills, okay? On top of this, and I don't want you to worry about it yet, but I want you to take note of it. A big portion of what we'll talk about kind of into the later month of February is something called crises, specifically athletic and then franchise crises, okay? And how do we manage that? How do social media profiles manage these things? Or how do respondents, the people within the organization, how do they kind of alleviate the crises that are going on within public image, okay? I want you to also take notice of that too. Are they addressing it? Are they not addressing it? Are they downplaying it? Are they saying they're taking responsibility? So I want you to also notice that too, but we're not going to get there yet. I just want you to notice it. Keep tabs on it. Okay. Keep tabs on it. So if you see something like, for example, the Bills firing McDermott and hiring the OC is getting a lot of backfire. It's getting a lot of backlash. That is a crisis, right? That is a crisis because people are not happy with it. There is some form of outrage. So check the Buffalo Bills and see if they are standing by their decision, how they are mitigating any potential backlash and outrage that is coming their way. Okay, that's the plan. This is what I want you to do for this content analysis final study. Okay. But today we're going to do kind of a brief introduction about what it is, what I want you to notice, what content analysis are used for. Okay. So it won't be long, won't be a long lecture, but one that is pretty crucial for this assignment coming up. Okay. First things first, your documentary analysis is due next Wednesday, so a week from today at 11:59 p.m. Okay, remember the rubric online, the rubric on Canvas is what I'm looking for. It's under the assignment itself. So you've all submitted your selections for what you're going to do. So make sure you keep to that. If you feel like you want to change it, go for it. Um, but for now, stick to that, stick to the rubric. Make sure you have ample time to watch it, take notes, and write your paper. Okay. It's a three page limit on this one. Feel free to go over. Don't stress out too much about it. I'm not asking for a whole lot. Okay. Next week should be normal schedule for us. Okay. Um, the game last night, I'm not going to dwell too much on it. It was horseshit, plain and simple. Terrible. I turned the game off. I turned the game off with about 10 minutes in the first half. I never do that. I usually let it go through halftime. I turned it off. And I did not go back to it after. It was awful. Awful. Pope is cracks in it. His team is completely out. There's no cohesion, there is no consistency. I look, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I mentioned it to previous classes, especially when Pope was hired. I was very anti-Pope when he was hired. Very anti-Pope. It seemed like a nepotism hire. It seemed like a just a feel-good hire. That you had a guy who played here, won a chip. That's about it. He really did not have much experience in a big-time conference, in a physical conference, and in the tournament as well. Now we had exception last year, okay, because he had players that fit his roles. There is no one that fits what he wants to do here. No one. No one can shoot the ball. There's no defensive intensity. No one knows where to be and what to do. The 4 game winning streak gave us hope, but we chose to neglect how we got it. Flukes, scams, right? It's not sustainable, okay? Again, don't want to touch too much about it. Arkansas on Saturday, they won a nail biter against Oklahoma last night. Oklahoma's not a good team. I don't know. At this point, I am dwindling very close to giving up complete hope on this team. And I don't like to do that with teams. I've done that a handful of times, specifically with the Calipari teams, but I am this close to giving up hope. If we get blown out against Arkansas there, it might be over. And I'm not calling for Pope out yet, but if it's another absolute shit show that it was last night, I very well might be calling Pope out. So we'll see. We'll see. It might be my kind of last glimmer of hope for this team on Saturday, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay. All right, so let's start for today. What exactly is content? When you hear the term content analysis, what exactly that is? So when we're discussing movies, sports, shows, uh, magazines, papers, websites, blogs, vlogs, anything. We refer to them by their specific genre or content. Okay? For example, we have your horror movies, action movies, drama movies, thriller movies, comedy movies. They're all film, right? But they have different subgenres. They have genres that they fall under for different types of people. We have reality, sitcom, police procedural, all those different television shows that we grew up watching. For sports, think of individual sports of those subsets of the individuals, right? So, for example, with football, you have the NFL, you have the NCAA, you have the USFL, right? You have different types, you have different leagues, but they are all embodying the same sport, okay? We can perceive some form of regularities about pieces of content, what we know to be true, what we know to be correct, and versus what we know to be wrong. Now, when we notice specific texts or artifacts, they might deviate from those expectations. That's when we take notice of them. And that's when we can begin to catalog them and use them for reference, okay? Now, these regularities are inherently individualistic and they are disputed, okay? Every person has their own thought about something, their own idea, their own opinion about how a piece of content is presented, okay? So for example, your favorite movie might be Avengers Endgame, okay? You might think it is masterfully directed, the cinematography is great. On the other hand, I think it's one of the worst of the Marvel movies, okay? I don't. It's actually really good. But you see how the different individuals dispute other opinions, right? So one person's content and the opinions, the regularities about that content is going to change and be different from another person's, okay? Think of Stephen A, right? You might think that when he was talking about the best place to land in Fortnite is an irregularity, specifically for people who maybe only watch Stephen A on the radio or know him as the sports analyst and the guy who worked for the Baltimore Star all those years ago and then working for ESPN. Us, probably the younger generation, who have known him to be a little bit more on the fringes in terms of staying true to the sport realm, we might see that as common, right? So two different people, two different sets see the same content in different ways. Okay. So that is what I want y'all to know with regarding what content is. Now we need to be careful here. Our own hunches and our own expectations can be in error, right? Specifically, we think of bias, right? Biases can interfere with our own gathering of content. And much of our understanding of the effects and the values and the role of telecommunications is dependent upon the content of television, radio, film, video games, etc. We need to analyze that content carefully, okay? We have our own thoughts and opinions and rules that we place within entertainment, within telecommunications, okay? It's dependent upon the nature of the content at the time, okay? So if for example you grew up watching television, children's television, you've seen how it's changed. Film has changed dramatically in terms of what was popular then, what is popular now. For example, some of the biggest genres in film back in the 50s, the 60s, 70s was westerns, right? Spaghetti westerns, okay? We don't see many westerns anymore, right? It's not exactly it's not in the time, right? We're now seeing a lot of thrillers. We're seeing horrors and we're seeing dramas, okay? That's how Hollywood, that's how media has shifted, okay? So it's necessary that we need to analyze content in particular within the time frame that we have now, but also we need to remove our own biases. We need to remove our own errors that we know that we have. Okay. So, for example, if I'm doing a content analysis about Man City, and I'm wearing all this garb today because they play the last Champions League today. I know that I am biased, right? So I may think that something they post is just right, but then on the underlining, they might be demeaning towards a specific player, a specific team, or specific league, or possibly raising other biases that exist outside of it. Okay, this is what I want y'all to know is as you go through your content, as you go through yourselves mediating it, right? Remove your own biases from the equation. At least try your hardest to do that. Okay? Biases are always going to be a form of error, and we have to try our best to remove that or error in order to make sure our results are as clean as possible. Okay? So let's analyze some texts. We can evaluate them in a lot of different unique ways. We call this entire group of methods a text analysis. Okay? The most heavily quantitative form of text analysis is called a content analysis. Now, what you need to know about quantitative versus qualitative. I think many of you know the difference or you've heard of these terms before. But quantitative is based on numerical data. Okay, numerical data. So, for example, if I am going to catalog the opinions of Kentucky basketball fans regarding Mark Pope, and I send out a questionnaire that has a scale, a Likert scale. You don't need to know what that is, but a Likert scale, which is well 1 through 7 or 1 through 5 or however you want to do it. 1 being your most disagree, 5 being your most agree. Okay, you send that out. Median comes back as a 3.9 for in favor of Pope out, or yeah, and then you gather that data, and then you can generalize to the population that X amount of UK fans want Pope out. Okay. You're able to generalize large forms of opinions based on quantitative content, but it's not going to be as reliable when you go into that large of a scale. Your qualitative, on the other hand, is going to be more opinion based, opinion from the source, if you will. So think of interviews, think of case studies, think of observational studies as well. That is going to be your difference between the two. For this content analysis is going to be purely quantitative, okay? Purely quantitative. Now, content analyses are research techniques for making inferences. They're systematically and objectively measuring specific characteristics of a text. Okay, so for example, when you pick up your team, player, league, whatsoever, you are trying to find specific characteristics of their profile, right? What do they focus on when they're posting to the people, right? What is their main form of communication? It's the most common form of research, okay? It's everywhere. There are hundreds of thousands of content analysis that exist, specifically over the last 30 years with the internet and large databases now being able to access this stuff easy, right? That's the importance of text analysis, of content analysis. They're common, but they're also kind of viewed as cheap and a little bit of slop. Okay, you can throw together a content analysis really easy. It doesn't take much. You can literally just kind of sit down, do your little content, throw it back in place, and say, hey, there's a correlation here, right? But it's not really refuted by anything else, not anything concrete. Okay, there's not the why, you only have the how. Okay, you only have the how it happened, not the why it happened. And we want to answer the why. We're not going to get there yet because we're not that deep, but that's the overall goal and why researchers often look at content analysis as easy and slop and low quality. But good ones, they're really good and they are used a ton. So if you ever look at content analyses on like Google Scholars, you will see that there are a ton of references to them, a ton because they're really easy to access and they're really easy to incorporate into your own work. Okay. So that's kind of the opinion about why text and content analysis aren't exactly the most favorable. So, what are our goals of our texts, right? What is the goal of what we're doing here? We want to explain the nature of communication. Okay. We want to describe the content, the structure, the functions of the messages contained in text. We want to understand why they are sending out what they are sending out. Okay. So, we also trying to figure out, oh, sorry, excuse me. We also want to figure out what does that text mean? Excuse me. And how does it achieve meaning? Okay. We're trying to figure out what was the purpose behind the overall sending of said message. So, for example, If UK Athletics posted something last night of Otega Owe with his head hung and said, "Got to be better." What does that mean to us? Where's the meaning behind it? The meaning is we lost in really bad fashion. And you're trying to alleviate, you're trying to take accountability, you're taking ownership of that loss. Okay. And you're sitting and saying, we acknowledge, you're sending out to your fans, we acknowledge how bad that we are or that we were. Okay. And we're trying to alleviate that by saying, we know how bad we are and we know that we need to keep working. Okay. That's the goal of it. That's the meaning with regarding the text. So we're trying to find these things within the text. Okay. We all want to describe how communication is related to other variables, right? Your input variables versus your outcome variables. For example, how does a corporate takeover affect television news coverage? Okay. We want to understand how does communication affect other forms of content, or is it like a ladder? Is it a pyramid? Is it a trickle down system? Does it start here and then work here and then here and then here and then here and here? All these different elements. Okay. So, for example, does the NFL issue a statement saying, or a new rule statement, but they frame it in a way that provide that is confusion, that has confusion or backlash or so on and so forth. Okay. Basically, we're seeing how does one form, one message, how does that affect the opinions, the variables of other sets beyond just the realm of communication. Okay. So that's also a goal. And then finally, we got to evaluate text by using sets of standard criteria. Okay. We have to find those set of standards in which communication can be compared. Okay. We're trying to find ways to say, hey, if I put this here, will this be understood? Okay. For example, is the text too hard to read for 12-year-olds? Right? If I throw War and Peace in front of a 12-year-old, is he going to know what I'm talking about? No chance, right? If I throw some other Dostoevsky work in front of a 34-year-old English scholar or literature major, yeah, pretty sure he's going to know what I'm talking about, right? But the criteria needs to remain the same, right? Or it needs to change based on who you are studying, right? So if I was going to do, is this text too hard to read? I'm not going to pick Leo, sorry, I'm not Dostoevsky. Leo Tolstoy wrote War and Peace. But if I'm going to look at 12-year-olds, maybe I would throw Percy Jackson. Okay, maybe I'll throw Percy Jackson in front of a 12-year-old. Can you read that? Right? Then I would throw in maybe The Hunger Games. I would throw in Harry Potter. I would throw in those other YA books to see if they would understand the content, see if they would know the messages, or are they too hard to interpret for them. So you have to understand that these texts need to be based upon criteria that is fitting to the individual that you are studying, or the thing, or the team that you are studying. Okay? These sets of standards have to be have to be compared to the communication. Okay? That is the goals here. Okay? Okay. So what is considered a text here? Any fixed symbolic whole. What that means is that it can be just anything if it has some form of meaning behind it. Doesn't matter what meaning, as long as it has meaning that can be interpreted differently from person to person. So think of stories, right? A story can have many different interpretations about the ending, the purpose of characters, the arcs of characters, so on and so forth. Textbooks as well. Churches, religions, websites, even conversations and interviews can be interpreted differently, right? For example, yeah, some of y'all might have seen the clip of the UK basketball last night or whatever it was saying 3-2-1 cash money before they went out to the floor. You can interpret that in different ways. Some people might say, "Oh, that's all they care about is just money. It's just getting the cash, getting the money, the millions of dollars of NIL they're promised." Another might say, when you hit a three, what do you often say? Cash, right? Or that's money. Okay, so there are different ways in which you can interpret that, and that's just a conversation. That's an interview. That is a observational form, right? That is a symbolic whole, and that is considered a text. Okay, so these are just some examples, but anything in which it is complete, and you know that it has meaning that can differentiate between two people or two or more people is considered a text, a symbolic whole. So, whole entire series of stories, for example, like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, is considered a text. Okay, but there's going to be a lot of stuff to watch in code. So you have to take of things. If you ever want to do a content analysis, something like that, beyond what we're going to do in this class, note that you have to manage it. You have to, if you decide to do it, you have to be very particular about what you are analyzing. Because if you say, "Oh, I want to analyze Star Wars: The Clone Wars," right, which is a t television show, right? I want to analyze that. Okay, there are 7 seasons. There are 20 plus episodes and five of them. Okay, so you have to decide, oh, am I going to analyze season one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, or all of them, or one of them? Okay, so you have to be very particular about them. Each season and its completion is considered a fixed symbolic whole, right? So you have to be very particular, very specific about what you are encountering here. Okay. So, where can we acquire these texts? You can listen to conversations in natural settings. That's going to be fixed. Each person is going to have a different interpretation about what that other sender is going to say, and then what messages are going to be received and received differently. Okay. You can always have conversations in controlled labs too. Note that there might be different, uh, there's going to be different meanings behind these two, right? One person here feels that they might be watched, so they have to change their message in a way that fits a certain criteria. This is going to be a little bit more loose. You cannot control what's going on. So some of the content that they might be sending you are could be irrelevant, might not be able to use. Okay. Lecture halls, right? That's complete. Fraternity and sorority houses, literary or historical sources like film, shows that have been aired, websites, okay? All different places. You also find text, basic texts as like textbooks as well. Papers. Don't shy away from those as well. Those are also crucial too. And those can be found in like Google Scholar, UKY libraries, right? This is your goal here. A lot of different ways that you can acquire text. You can acquire text if you're not even trying to do so, right? If it's just a basis of observation, if you're people watching, you can find some, you can know that that is a text. That will be a complete, that will be a fixed meaning, a fixed symbolic whole, and you know that there will be different shared meanings between the two. Okay? So, let's what I want this I want I kind of want to go into different I want to go into specifics about what I want you to do for this one. I gave you all a little bit of a taste to begin with at the beginning of class, but now let's kind of go to what I want you to do specifically. So I want you to select the text to be analyzed. This is all you, right? You get to choose what you want to do. Your team, player, league, I don't care as long as it is unique, right? Is it's different. It's something that maybe we're not accustomed with. Or if you're a fan of a team that's really obscure, talk to me about it, right? Select those texts, right? So you have to choose that. Then I want you to determine your coding and recording units. Okay, this are you going to do it by mentions? Are you going to do it by hours? Are you going to do it by posts? So, for example, if I'm going to hop on Instagram, or I'll take that back, I'm going to hop on Twitter, I'm going to hop on X, right? For example, am I going if I'm going by mentions, am I going all of UK's posts plus the mentions that are not exactly tied to the post? So, for example, if I would post at UK basketball, y'all were really bad last night. You were so terrible. That is a mention, and you have to keep track of that too. So watch that. You gotta make sure you have to be very specific and watch it. Okay. Your hours. So for example, if I want to do something based on a television show, how many hours do they talk about the team? Or how many minutes are they talking about it too? Okay. And then finally, the easiest one, I think in my opinion for this is just your posts. How many times do they post on social media? How many times do they post on a website? Okay. Then I want you to develop your content categories. This is what I taught to y'all at the beginning. Think of if I'm doing UK basketball and they post on Twitter, right? Are they posting practice, performance, charity, endorsements, recruiting, um, financial stuff, right? These are going to be your different categories that you can begin coding. Okay. So, for example, UK posts a photo of Mark Pope at a press conference. What could that be under? Team news slash interviews. Boom. Otoge Owe, a live action shot of hitting a three. Performance. Okay. So you kind of see how that works. Okay. Train observers to code units into categories. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These are your code units, these are your categories. You got to make sure that you can accurately tell where they will belong once they are posted. And then you carry out the coding while monitoring for quality. Okay. This means keeping tabs on when they post and on what platforms they do it on. So you can't miss it and you got to make sure that you are accurate. Usually I would keep track of when they post it to, whether that be date or time, preferably both. It makes it a lot easier. Okay. And then you analyze the data. See, where is the meaning behind that? If they posted a bunch of performance over the month of February, is that because they were good? Is that because they were bad? Is that because they were trying to get publicity or get fans or get people back on board? You're trying to figure out the why rather than the how. You already have the how, right? You already have the how. Why, the act of posting it itself. Now you're figuring out why did they post it? Okay, that's where we begin to analyze our content there. Okay. And then you find your samples, right? Your population is the totality of text we want to say something about. Okay. This is going to be really, really big. Now, again, we're not going to really target this much because this is just we're actually our parameters are very narrow for this assignment. Okay. But if you want to go beyond that, if you want to go beyond that, you have to take into account what your population is going to be and how you attribute that, how you actually acquire your population. Okay? Because you just pick random people out of a crowd, that's random sampling, right? That also could be you're not going to find any correlation. If I want to do a snowball sample, a convenience sample, for example, that would be, for instance, if I want to do a study about gambling, right? I can't just pick random people out of a crowd because maybe not everybody gambles. I want my study to say something about gambling. So if I'm doing a convenience sample, I would pick one guy who I know gambles a bunch. Chances are he also knows a lot of people who gambles a bunch, and he's going to say, "Hey, I'm in a study about gambling. Do you want to join too?" It pays. Absolutely, right? That's going to be your simple your convenience sample. A lot of different ways that you can sample here. Okay? Again, we're not going to touch much about it, but that's what you're going to be your population is and how you achieve it. It's a little difficult and it's a little vague if you want to attribute this to back to our kind of sport thing. For example, all mentions of Patrick Mahomes on ESPN. Well, which one? For example, there's ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, ESPN News, SEC Network, ESPN.com, ESPN Ocho, right? All these different places that ESPN exists. So have to be specific about where you want to go, what your population of texts are going to be. All ESPN mentions or just the main channel of ESPN, okay? All coverage of hockey on ESPN, right? Does that include ESPN.com, ESPN Plus, or just main ESPN, okay? So be very specific on how you gather your population, okay? The totality of text that you get, okay? We can analyze a census, which is going to be large, or we can sample, which is you're going to pick or choose. Okay. Your sampling techniques for surveys can be done here too. Random versus non-random. Non-randoms are good for theoretical or practical use, right? Kind of what I mentioned to y'all at the beginning. Your choosing of your population is going to be very indicative about how you want this study to go. If you're trying to prove a point, right? If I'm doing a content analysis, I'm trying to prove a point here. Like, for example, gambling is bad or gambling is good. I'm going to pick gamblers, right? I'm going to pick gamblers because that would make the most sense in getting correlative data here. Okay. If I pick non-gamblers and I'm trying to say gambling is bad, it serves no purpose because there's no data to back that up, right? So it really depends. But if I'm going theoretical and saying, is there a correlation? Is there a correlation between the average population? Yeah, non-randoms would be good. Okay. This all makes sense? All right, cool. What is this? Oh, yes. This is what I want you all to do. Yeah, I completely forgot that this was here. This is what I want you to do. This is an example of a content analysis, okay? Um, that I want y'all to focus on here. And oh, you can see that it's Man City. Oh, how convenient. Okay. How convenient that this is here, right? So I'll give you this. This was mine. Okay. This was mine and that I did for an example for this class. Okay. So what I want y'all to do, and this is exactly what I want you to have an introduction, right? So this is you laying out. I will post this on Canvas for y'all to access as well. I think it already is on Canvas if you check under files. Um, let me see. Which sample papers? Yes. Okay. So, a lot of yours, if you want to access content analysis stuff, hop under files and hop under sample papers and presentations. All this stuff is there for you to access, for you to make sure, oh, this is how this is done, or this is how Professor Luke wants this to be done. Okay, so that's what I want you to focus on. Um, okay, so again, you have your introduction, what you're talking about here, why you're talking about it, your variables of interest, so Instagram, Twitter, okay? And then ESPN FC, that's your variables of interest. Okay. Now your category systems. What were mine? Charity, performance, endorsements, team news, practice, fixtures, contracts, and others. Okay. So that's going to be the things that I will use as headers. Everything beyond under that will be, oh, they posted here about charity, posted here. Okay. And your units, okay, was categorized how often City posts, what they post about. Um, Here I hypothesized how many times they would post, visualization. So here's your charts of where they posted, your findings, right? So this is you say how many times did they actually post here. This is with Instagram, 169 of the 338 posts for charity, 36 endorsements, so on and so forth. Okay. Same thing for Twitter and then ESPN FC. Then you discuss here with why do you think they posted what they posted? Averages of likes. Um, And then you have a little bit of some crises here, and then you're finally your conclusion. Okay, so just tying everything back into the main points. Okay, so that's the overall idea of what I want you to tackle for this. Okay, so again, um, all that stuff is able to access on Canvas under sample papers and presentations. So if you ever have any help or need some clarification about what I'm looking for, use some of those on there as examples. Those are some of the best of the things that I've seen over time. Okay. Uh, yes. Okay. For participation for today, I know this says 122 because I was planning to do that then, but I shifted it. What I want you to do is I want you to think, why do you think content analyses are looked at so poorly in academic circles, knowing what you know now? Do their findings have merit, or are they just there to show and not tell? And I want you to write about a paragraph on the Google form that I'll send out for y'all, and answer that for participation for today. Okay? So again, this is just a brief introduction about what content analyses are. So make sure that you begin to look for who or what you're going to be doing it on and begin making those coding units and setting time aside to make sure that you are accurately and precisely recording when they post and in what category they fall under. Okay? That's the main goal I want you to see and that I want you to tackle for this assignment. I know there's going to be questions about this, so feel free to send me an email, free to come to my office hours next week. And we'll definitely discuss more about this in class on Monday. Okay? All right. Stay warm, stay safe, everyone. I hope we can start to actually do some things here soon. I hope to see y'all again next week because this is ridiculous. I hate not having class. It's really boring. Um, but yeah, stay warm, stay safe. Hopefully we will begin normal schedule, some form of normalcy next week. All right. Have a good weekend, y'all.